Friends, I am Vijay Kumar, Deputy Secretary in the Government of India. This is my third talk on general financial rules. In this talk, I will discuss Chapter 3. This chapter is in two parts. From Rule 42 to Rule 56, this chapter deals with budget formulation and implementation, whereas from Rule 57 to Rule 70, it deals with provisions relating to control of expenditure against budget. For a better understanding of this chapter, please revisit my earlier talk on legislative control over the government finance. I have given its link in the description. Rule number 42 defines financial year of the government, whereas rule number 43 talks about the presentation of budget. The provisions for preparation, formulation and submission of budget before both the houses of parliament are contained in Articles 112 to 116 of the Constitution of India. Please go through these constitutional provisions carefully. It would also be important to highlight that with the merger of railway budget with the general budget, the demands for grants and the statement of budget estimates of railways also forms part of the general budget with effect from 2017-18. In terms of Rule 44, the budget shall contain the following. First, estimates of all revenues expected to be raised during the financial year to which the budget relates. Second, estimates of all expenditure for each program, a scheme and project in that financial year. Third, estimates of all interest and debt servicing charges and any repayments on loans in that financial year. Fourth, any other information as may be prescribed. The Ministry of Finance, Budget Division, Department of Economic Affairs shall issue guidelines for preparation of budget estimates from time to time. All the ministries, departments shall comply in full with these guidelines. Rule 45 provides that the receipt estimates shall be prepared by the estimating authorities, measure headwise with breakup in minor, sub, detailed headwise and with utmost care. As regards expenditure estimates, Rule 50 provides that these estimates shall show votable and charged expenditures separately. The estimates shall also distinguish provisions for expenditure on revenue account from capital account. The detailed estimates of expenditure shall be prepared by the estimating authorities up to the final unit of appropriation, that is the object head, under the prescribed major and minor heads of accounts for both revenue and capital expenditure. Estimates shall include suitable provision for liabilities of the previous years that is to be discharged during the year. The revised and budget estimates of both revenue and capital expenditure, after being scrutinized by the financial advisors and approved by the Secretary of the Administrative Ministry or Department concerned, shall be forwarded to the Budget Division in such manner and forms as may be prescribed by it from time to time. I am skipping rules 46, 47, 48, 49 as these are quite simple, but these rules are important. You can read these rules on your own. In terms of Rule 51, the estimates for expenditure for which vote of Lok Sabha is required shall be in the form of demand for grants. Generally, one demand for grant is presented in respect of each ministry or department. However, in respect of large ministries or departments, more than one demand may be presented. The main demand for grants shall be presented to Parliament by the Ministry of Finance, Budget Division, along with the annual financial statement, while the detailed demands for grants for consideration by the departmentally related standing committee of the Parliament are laid on the table of the Lok Sabha by the concerned ministries, departments, as per dates approved from time to time. The measure head-wise provisions in the detailed demands for grants shall match with the provisions made in the demands for grants presented by the Budget Division, as the appropriations are short on the basis of demands for grants. I am skipping rules 52 and 53 also because these rules are also quite easy to understand and I want to keep my talk focused on major issues. In terms of Rule 54, after finalization of the estimates for budgetary allocations, the Department of Expenditure, in consultation with Niti Aayog and the concerned ministries, shall prepare an outcome budget statement linking outlays against each scheme and project with the outputs and deliverables and medium-term outcomes. The outputs and deliverables shall be mandatorily given in measurable and quantitative terms on the basis of parameters and deliverables decided in advance, on the basis of projections made in the medium-term expenditure framework (MTEF) statement. Allocations for each scheme project shall be against a firm set of deliverables which shall be adhered to. The performance against specified outcomes would form the basis of deciding on the continuation of the scheme and the quantum of budget allocation. In terms of Rule 55, if the appropriation bill seeking authorization of the Parliament to make expenditure in consonance with the budget proposal is likely to be passed after the start of the financial year to which it corresponds, then pending the completion of the procedure prescribed in Article 113 of the Constitution for the passing of the budget, the Finance Ministry may need to obtain a vote on account to cover expenditure for a brief period in accordance with the provisions of Article 116 of the Constitution. Funds made available under vote on account are not to be utilized for expenditure on a new service. Rule 56 resembles Rules 7 and 9 of DFPR. It provides that after the appropriation bill relating to budget is passed, the Ministry of Finance shall communicate the same to the ministries, departments, which in turn shall distribute the same to their subordinate formations. The distribution so made shall also be communicated to the respective pay and accounts officers, who shall exercise check against the allocation to each subordinate authority. However, Rule 57 bestows responsibility on the departments of the central government for control of expenditure against the sanctioned grants and appropriations placed at their disposal. No charges against a grant or appropriation can be authorized after the expiry of the financial year. No expenditure shall be incurred which may have the effect of exceeding the total grant or appropriation authorized by Parliament by law for a financial year. Further, an excess in any one portion or section is to be treated as an excess in the grant or appropriation. To have effective control over expenditure, the controlling and disbursing officers shall maintain minute details of the expenditure by observing the elaborate procedure as given in Sub-Rule 4 of Rule 57. The head of the department and the accounts officer shall be jointly responsible for the monthly reconciliation of the figures given in the accounts maintained by the head of the department with those appearing in the accounts officer's books. The procedure for reconciliation shall be as given in Sub-Rule 5 of Rule 57. The departments of the central government shall obtain from their heads of departments and other offices under them the departmental figures of expenditure in Form GFR 8 by the 15th of the month following the month to which the returns relate. In case the accounts office figures are found to be higher than departmental figures, the former shall be assumed to be the correct figures, as appropriation accounts are prepared on the basis of the figures booked in the accounts office. The departments of the central government shall also obtain from the heads of departments and other authorities under them statements showing the details of the physical progress of the schemes for which they are responsible. This statement shall show the name of the scheme, the budget provision for each scheme, the progressive expenditure on each scheme, the progress of the scheme in physical terms, and the detailed reasons for any shortfalls or excess, both against physical and financial targets. Rule 58 provides that in order to maintain proper control over expenditure, a controlling officer shall obtain from the spending authorities liability statements in Form GFR 3A every month, starting from the month of October in each financial year. The controlling officer shall also maintain a liability register in Form GFR 3. Rule 59 provides that the personal attention of the head of department or controlling officer would be required to estimate savings or excesses every month so that it may be regularized in accordance with the instructions laid down in Rule 62. In terms of Rule 60, though the accounts officer shall report to the head of the department concerned immediately on the first appearance of any disproportionate expenditure, the authority administering a grant or appropriation would be ultimately responsible for the control of expenditure against the grant or appropriation and not the accounts officer. Rule 61 provides that the accounts officer shall not allow any payment against sanctions in excess of the budget provisions unless there is a specific approval of the chief accounting authority. Further, the financial advisors and chief accounting authority before according concurrence for access under any head shall ensure availability of funds through reappropriation, supplementary demands for grants. Rule 62 provides that departments of the central government shall surrender to the finance ministry by the dates prescribed by that ministry before the close of the financial year all the anticipated savings noticed in the grants or appropriations controlled by them. The finance ministry shall communicate the acceptance of such surrenders as are accepted by it to the accounts officer before the close of the year. The funds provided during the financial year and not utilized before the close of that financial year shall stand lapsed at the close of the financial year. The savings as well as provisions that cannot be profitably utilized shall be surrendered to government as soon as they are foreseen without waiting till the end of the year. No savings shall be held in reserve for possible future excesses. Rush of expenditure, particularly in the closing months of the financial year, shall be regarded as a breach of financial propriety and shall be avoided. The financial advisors of the ministries, departments shall ensure adherence to the stipulated quarterly or monthly expenditure plan and the guidelines issued in this regard by the budget division from time to time. Rule 63 provides that no expenditure shall be incurred during a financial year on a new service not contemplated in the annual budget for the year except after obtaining a supplementary grant or appropriation or an advance from the contingency fund during that year. Rule 64 provides that where any excess over the allotment is apprehended, the subordinate authority shall obtain additional allotment before incurring the excess expenditure. For this purpose, the authorities incurring expenditure shall maintain a liability register in form GFR 3. Rule 65 provides that reappropriation of funds from one primary unit of appropriation to another such unit within a grant or appropriation may be sanctioned by a competent authority at any time before the close of the financial year to which such grant or appropriation relates. Reappropriation of funds shall be made only when it is known or anticipated that the appropriation for the unit from which funds are to be transferred shall not be utilized in full or that savings can be effected in the appropriation for the said unit. In terms of Rule 66, if savings are not available within the grant to which the payment is required to be debited, or if the expenditure is on new service or new instrument of service not provided in the budget, necessary supplementary grant or appropriation in accordance with Article 115, Clause 1 of the Constitution shall be obtained before payment is authorized. Rule 67 provides that when a need arises to incur unforeseen expenditure in excess of the sanctioned grant or appropriation or on a new service not provided in budget, and there is not sufficient time for the voting of the supplementary demand and the passing of the connected appropriation bill before close of the financial year, an advance from the contingency fund set up under Article 267, Clause 1 of the Constitution shall be obtained before incurring the expenditure. An advance from the contingency fund shall also be obtained to meet expenditure in excess of the provisions for the service included in an appropriation act or vote on account. I am skipping rules 68 and 69 as these are quite simple. Rule 70 provides an illustrative list of duties and responsibilities of the Chief Accounting Authority. The Secretary of a Ministry Department is the Chief Accounting Authority. With this brief account regarding Chapter 3 of GFRs 2017, I would like to conclude my third talk. In my next talk, I will cover Chapter 4, which is on government accounts and spans from Rule 71 to Rule 129. I thank you for patient listening.